All right, guys, good evening, everybody. Please take a seat for those of us standing. Thank you all for coming to the November event of the IARG. We have a few guests here, so for those of you who are not IARG members, the IARG group is a group of senior executives that have substantial international experience, and that they meet once a month on this networking occasion to exchange information leads and business ideas and so on. So for those of you who are guests, feel free to talk to anybody who's a member. And for our members, welcome again. Tonight we have a great event. Normally, the November event is dedicated to something to do with social media. And as usual, we need to always integrate the international aspect of it. So tonight, the event is making social media work in the global environment. And we have a great speaker, our speaker Lou, who is the VP of Social Media for the American Marketing Association, AMA, here in Boston. He's also the organizer of the Boston Internet Marketing Meetup. And he's a founding partner of the Business One Plus, which is a localized online marketing firm. So I'd like you to welcome Lou, and feel free to, I don't know whether you want to have questions before, during, or after, or just take it from here.
Yeah, take it from
here.
There's a lot of content for sure.
Great.
So
Thank you.
I'll try to get through as much as I can.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks, Diego. Thanks for inviting me down. Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. And there's like a lot we can talk about for sure with global social media. Just curious, how many people are actively involved in marketing side function for your businesses? And how many people are in the social media end? Oh, cool, good. And expertise level, beginning side, expert. I like making skiing equations. How many people are green circle, blue square, or black diamond? And you'll see some references to that as I go through, because for a lot of this, it's just social media itself is complex. You know, there's for as much as it's simple, there's a lot of stuff that goes around. Apply a global perspective to it, and things get interesting fast. So let's see if I can get this to go through. I won't sing the Disney "It's a Small World" song, but I'll put it all in your heads, because from social media, certainly it's become a small world. And people connecting globally is way easier than it was even a few years ago. What this chart is showing you, and I realize it's probably tough to see any of the fine print on it, but there's the big social networks, the Facebooks, the Twitters, and the LinkedIns are globally enabled. They've made huge steps really in the past year, especially on Facebook and LinkedIn, to localize better on a global basis. So that's one of the bigger trends that has been shifting. And it's almost, every time you look, something new has come up. Staying up with this stuff is more than a full-time job in and of itself. And then obviously each country has its own niche networks as well. And that's probably one of the key things with all this is like, you're going to do a global program, it has to be totally local to the target audience. If it's not going to work. They're going to know that it's not right. You're not saying it in the right language, the right words, the right spelling. That throws people off almost immediately. So I'm going to be harping back on, how local can you make it, and what are your resources and bandwidth to actually do that? That's kind of a big component to this. To this thing here, it's like one thing that does speak to social media. The companies that are doing it and doing it on an organized fashion are, seeing more financial success. And we run into a lot of people. I deal with a lot of professional services firms, and it's like the last thing they want to do is play with social. But the research is coming out that the companies that are doing it and embracing it are advancing, and they're growing, and they're becoming more profitable as a result. Again, to the why do it, I say there's the what you think it is, and then there's the what they think. And to a lot of online marketing, what you think, I'll argue, doesn't matter. It's what the audience thinks. Are you doing good messaging that makes sense to them and is relevant? And to everything around search engines and social, relevancy is key. And what does this target audience want? They want some kind of value out of their social, be it a discount, a coupon, or education. So you have to be sure you're delivering what the audience is looking for. And especially to what seems to be a corporate audience, you've got shareholders and stockholders that are looking for return on investment. So what is the expected payoff that you're going to do by running any given campaign, even social media in general? But also, it's like, how does social media help your company achieve its mission? What are you doing there to get this messaging across, share the values, the branding? I'll argue, too, a lot of it just comes back to branding. What are you getting? You'll see some stuff here from Coca-Cola, great international brand. How is that delivered, from location to location? And one piece that threw in the last part, to monetize and not to monetize. Everybody wants to monetize social media. Social doesn't necessarily monetize also well in and of itself, but it's the traffic that it's driving into some place that can, make a sale or make a relationship. But I'll also argue, do it wrong, and you will not monetize rather rapidly as well. And you might have a bigger negative side problem with, kind of money going out the door, especially if it's a PR-related crisis. So kind of key thing, starting off with some goals and objectives. I'll let you guys do the quick read on, how do you become a social business? It's as much about embracing all the different technologies and people around it and, getting all your people rowing in the same direction. But my number one rule, probably the first thing I learned as I got really interested in online and social media, was this is all a listening tool first. So what's going on out there? What's being said? Are you paying attention to it? On the search engine side, they reward you for what I call paying attention, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, making sure everything is done, especially technically correct. To the whole technical side, the tighter you button it up, be it with data feeds or correct wording or even name, address, phone number being correctly done from property to property makes a big difference. So there is a technical side to it. But then there's also, to your audience, what are they looking for out of this? What are you delivering to them? So you can do a tremendous amount of listening with social media. Search.twitter, one great place to start. It's like throw in a phrase or your company name in there and see what the conversations are. Are people tweeting that they hate your company's guts, or are they telling, great stories of how somebody helped them solve a problem? It can change rapidly one way or the other. And so what do you want to achieve? Brand awareness, social media does a lot of that. It starts to give you an opportunity to share your brand on a human side. Traffic is, the ultimate reward in some ways. It's like you're getting people to come to your websites. The more traffic coming to your websites, in theory, you can get to a conversion point and have some ROI activity that you can track. And leads, obviously, sales, why are we here? From a business standpoint, you're trying to make more sales. Loyalty comes into place. I think one of the other important things, though, is market influence. How do you become an influencer of your market? And I think it goes right down to the personal level for each person. Are you identifiable? When somebody searches for your name, what do they find? And, how much do you control your reputation? There's two sides of reputation management. There's what shows up online, and there's what people say about you. You'll see a lot of lawyers that have their name in their URL. It's like, again, what controls it down to the personal level? I always advise people, be you first, control your own identity. You may be at this firm now, but when you're at the next firm or to wherever life takes you, who are you? Do you have a good presence online? A lot of people really avoid it. They don't want any part of it. But I'll hopefully, tip some people towards, control your own destiny, control your name. Can you control your name? I have a Bill Smith for a client, so he's got more of a challenge. As a Lou Sabag, there's not a lot of us out there, so I got a better chance of, controlling what shows up. And how do you measure it? This is all analytics driven. That's got to be at its core. If you don't have people paying attention on the analytics side, it's I'd argue, why bother? It's like flying with a blindfold. You don't know who's coming to your sites, what they're saying, what they're doing. You really need to have an analytics driven culture, especially as you go global. If you don't have that infrastructure, you'll be well challenged, and you're as much close to having a disaster as you are to have something good happening. And an interesting part, conversions is a big word. What's a conversion? Is it somebody calling you, sending you an email, asking for a proposal, or is it liking your Facebook page? They all can be a conversion. In website, we like to see what's called goal funnels. And if for anybody familiar with analytics, how many people see their goal funnels through their website when they are in their analytics? Google charts completely, where someone's path goes through your website, and you can chart it further. What's that pathway from awareness to the buy? We'll talk on that a little further. And I like to talk to people about hard goals and soft goals. What are your hard goals? Get a quote, have somebody buy, have somebody donate. But then the soft goals, sign up for your newsletter, download your ebook. And there's another concept that I like. It's called the free line. Where's the free line? What are you giving away for free? A lot of free expectation on the internet. A true free line is you give them, say, an ebook, and you don't even ask for an email. You ask for an email. So they're giving you something for something back. Where do you start charging? Do you see a lot of companies doing $9 a month, or what's the escalation process? It's a great concept. Where does free stop and start, and how much of an incentive is it to, actually get somebody to, do the behavior you're asking for? And to the whole participation thing, I hear this a lot from the professional services side. We don't want to do any of that social media stuff. We've heard people got burned with it. And that's an exact quote from one guy in particular I can think of. It's going on anyway, especially to the social media folks. The conversations are going. How much of it are you paying attention to? You can't ignore it, especially from a PR side. When something goes wrong and you see a company that just doesn't respond for even a day, it's like all of a sudden the pressure is just building like crazy, and what's going to be said. I'll speak further to that when we run we run a number of Facebook pages, and there's the idea of social customer care, customer service coming through social. Well, if something bad's happening and you respond to it quickly and either dissolve it or escalate it correctly, you're putting it to bed before it goes viral. On the other side, if something good's happening, how are you fostering that good word and someone saying thanks and then starting to spread it into that many more streams where people are seeing it? So risk comes into play, especially from a corporate perspective. All this stuff, as I say, it's a high degree of difficulty. You're juggling a lot of things. I like to call it spinning plates. You're spinning the Facebook channel. You're running Twitter. Start to throw in globalization in multiple countries, and it's like you got a lot of stuff going. What's going to support that? And you need to be relevant and understood across time zones, cultures, language variations. For some of you, I'm sure there's regulatory concerns that come into play in different legal environments. So all of a sudden you got a lot of different factors that come into play with what sounds like, yeah, let's do a social media campaign. And from a personal basis, I like to call it what's your bandwidth, We kind of joke about social media. It's like 24/7. We don't sleep. We're just always, tweeting something. And in some cases, it does seem like that. So I will emphasize it's like start slow. Pick one channel. Get it working right, test it. It should be working. I have a rule of two, I call it. To us being in this meeting here and to any ideas that, may make sense for you, if you haven't done something usually within 2 days, you probably won't. It's just kind of a psychological thing. Unless something's driving you to pick up, 2 days is like a magic number. So then 2 weeks later, have you started the project? Is it outlined? Does it have a visibility factor that makes it real? Within 2 months, again, is it up and running? Is it working as you thought it would? But I say the big test is 2 years. Does your company newsletter go for 2 years? Did your blog go for 2 years? If you're meeting that, it's probably become some sort of either ROI center, profit center. It's doing something that is making it sustainable. So that's a kind of a big thing. It's like, does it have a sustainability factor to it, or does it just go away once everyone gets tired of it? Another key concept around risk is, do you own what you think you own? It's like in Facebook. You don't own Facebook. You're like borrowing it, basically. It's theirs. Understanding terms of service in all the properties is critical, especially if something happens. If you're running a big company Facebook page and you screw up and they shut you off, you've got to get that fixed somehow, or you might not. We've had YouTube channels just shut down. And, all of a sudden you're talking to an email that never replies back to you. So having a good understanding of what you actually own, even some platforms, marketing platforms, when you're on them and you've built all your assets into them, if you stop using them, you've been basically renting the property. So what goes away? Do you have a plan to get your assets out of there? That was all the IP that you put in, or does it just disappear when you stop paying? That can be a big danger. There had been 3 types of media, paid, owned, and earned, they call it. Now there's another one, hijacked. Who's stealing your stuff and repurposing it for themselves or just putting it wherever. And there's also the sold part, people taking it and either you selling data on your behalf or someone selling it for you that you don't know about. So kind of key concepts. It just depends what fits into your global marketplace. What do you have to balance against risk, and especially to what shareholders and stockholders are going to demand. Policies and protocols. As I kind of said before, bad news travels really fast online. It doesn't take much for something to go viral. But so does good news, and especially if you're able to foster it. So that's the plus side. I've got a number of friends in the PR business that do crisis management. I think that's become a growth field in PR, certainly. And it's almost like when you get hacked, it's not a problem till it happens. And then all of a sudden, it's a big problem. And what do you do to fix it? So crisis planning is really important. Policies, what is your online policy? You should have a written one, and everybody should understand it. All this new channels coming through is like every time you blink there's something new. It's like, what can you actually be handling? So in the back of this, there is a link to the WAMA, the Word of Mouth Marketing Association. They have a great piece on social media governance. And there's another link in back there, too, for some samples of social media policies. I would imagine most of the larger companies probably have a pretty solid policy, but for a lot of folks, it's all new territory. And as you get down to it, who's your first responder? Are they trained? We have brand teams that go to our clients and do 2- and 3-day like brand immersions. They'll go work in the business so that they start to really understand. So they know how to respond at the first level. We'll have FAQs that are pre-set up so that they know how to respond to certain questions. But the key becomes when the escalation happens. Do we send it to a manager, or does it need to go right to corporate? And they've got to deal with it. And the quicker the better, especially we've had discrimination issues pop up. And it's like you need to deal with them quickly because people can all of a sudden start tweeting, awful quickly, and it just can it spread around the globe? Yeah, it's possible. Who's your review and approval person? And within your systems, do you have safeties to catch stuff before something does go out? A big problem that happens a lot is, you'll be doing something on your personal side and then you're working on your professional side. Do you mess up and all of a sudden you've done the wrong piece for the wrong person? That's not hard to do. So proper systems is really important as well. And when does somebody, stop being an employee and goes back to being a person? And what are they allowed to say on either side of that? I see a lot of financial services people that are like their hands are tied by compliance. It's amazing they can do business in this arena because they can't say anything online. It's very frustrating for them. Somebody has to really make a breakthrough to figure out what is the right process that lets them communicate, because the world's doing it anyway. They just have to catch up. And another little piece, especially for AMA when we do it. So I run about 8 different channels for the American Marketing Association, all volunteer-based. And I'll have channel leaders in each place, each one generally a senior marketing person that knows what they're doing. But the whole basis of the group is it's like educational. It's peer-to-peer networking. So you got a lot of volunteers that you're hoping do the right thing. So it's when our tweeting teams come on, they're identifying who they are with codes. As you're tweeting in a corporate environment, who are you? Who's tweeting? Is it legal? Is it, whoever it might be in a corporate division? There's a whole series of codes that can be employed, and people in the know will realize who's speaking on whose behalf. But, there's an authenticity side to all this too. Who's really talking? Is it really you, or is it, somebody else? That's important because social media does really drive back to the individual level. It's like, how authentic are you? So audience, this is the basic stuff of audience. Who's your target? Who's your bullseye? My argument here is local is local is local, and especially as you go global. You have to, I would say it's a must that you have a team that is either in that country or so closely tied to it that they can really speak the language and understand the culture so you don't make a mistake. We have a client we're doing a website for now. They deal in a global marketplace. They have a big operation in Turkey. 2 years in, we found out that the word contractor in Turkish is not a good word, and that's been on their site. That just came up all of a sudden. So stuff, it's the who knew part, you know. Do you have people, your translation side, you know, don't rely on Google Translate to pull it off. You need native people involved in the situation. You know, another thing that the leaders tend to do is personas. Who are we talking to? You know, what is your audience? The tighter you dial that in and the more you can speak to that person, generally the better the results. And then I'll bring in, you know, what voice do they listen to? You know, Google, when they're doing a search, and especially as you go to personalized search, their ideal is they'll show you a page of search results. If they can show you reviews from 3 or 4 friends that you know, to the painter down the street, that he was good or bad, that's huge. You know, it's like then you're bringing it to somebody where you can, you know who they are. Could you call them up and ask them? It's like, so what are those voices that have the authority? And then again, same thing as you go to a foreign country. What is the appropriate voice that your audience is paying attention to? It doesn't so much matter what you think is important. It's, you know, what they're thinking is important and truly what they care about. To the word stack there, you know, yeah, you got your demographics, how old, all that, you know, the basic stuff. Psychographics, how are they thinking, you know, what drives them. A new term that I saw pop up and kind of echoed with me was technographic. So what level is your target audience really operating at? You know, for instance, in the Soviet Union, not a lot of people have internet connection. I think it's like 90+% of the population really doesn't have internet connections. Social media is not going to help them. The people that do, I think it's about 5%, are very actively involved. So all of a sudden you got this technology thing. If they're not getting it on their smartphone, or if it's not working on their smartphone, your messages are not getting across. Social graphic is like all the social behavior stuff. You know, what channels are they in? Are they Facebook people or are they LinkedIn people? Where's your audience hanging out? And you'll find, or I find, a LinkedIn audience can be completely different than a Twitter audience and a Facebook audience, and especially Twitter. Twitter's got its own people that are like thoroughly into it, and that's their main mode. And then you'll have people that are, you know, Facebook, friends and family. Twitter's a little more, you know, I don't know, Wild West of sorts, but it's also an amazing news tool that, you know, if you're paying attention to Twitter, you know, you may know what's happening even minutes before. A good example is when Osama bin Laden was killed. The news came through Twitter first. And, you know, if you're in a financial services arena and you know something 5 minutes before the rest of the world, that's huge. There's services out there that help you track on Twitter so that you are getting that little bit of info just before the rest of the world. And if it's the right stuff, you're able to act on it ahead of people. I don't know the site offhand, but there's, for instance, showing the spread of tweets around the globe. There's sites that will show you that view. And it's very interesting to how it starts to interconnect and what retweets start to populate it around the globe. The chart I saw was on Osama bin Laden, and how it just took minutes to cover the globe through tweets and retweets. The last one, micrographic, that's more where my day-to-day job comes in. You know, if you can dial something down to the individual level and just deliver one ad instead of 1,000 ads, generally better. Hopefully it's more targeted to exactly what segment they fit into, what they care about. And the technology allows it, but it takes a lot to get there. So it's a good concept to start to onboard, especially as if you're in a global marketplace. Micrographic could just pertain on a country by country or a language by language, and maybe it's a neighborhood by neighborhood basis. Another important part here is, you know, what's the path to purchase? What is somebody going through as they're finding out about your company all the way through to, let's say in this case, till they hit the buy button. Again, analytics is going to show you that, especially if you've got it connected up correctly and you've got your goals set through. You will see the path as it comes through a website. I'll jump to it. There's a concept that Google has. It's called ZMOT, Z-M-O-T. If you Google it, they'll deliver you a wonderful ebook about the concept. It's a 0 moment of truth. So it's when does a person get to a point when they're hitting that buy button, and it's everything they did before that took them there. And that's where things like social media comes in. Did they see it on YouTube? Did they see it in Facebook? Did a friend vet it? It's like, what's that path to purchase? And it may not necessarily be purchase. It might be to whatever your conversion goal is. And a big thing here is like you're all a publisher, almost whether you like it or not. If you're in Facebook, Google+, Twitter, you're acting as a publisher, and social media enables that on a large scale. But it's the market influence part that I think is kind of critical. What are you doing to educate your audience? That's what's expected. People looking for education. In a professional service environment, there's a lot of people that are not at the top. They're at the middle and lower levels doing initial research. What is your company doing that gets that person to notice you and start to dig into your content? And as it starts to go up the chain, they're sharing what they're finding in their research. There's some stats I see that, a lot of companies will do, I've seen anywhere from 60 to 90% of their research before they ever call a salesperson. So they're in looking at your site or your competitor's site, trying to figure out what's there. There's a lot of marketing tracking systems. Eloqua comes to mind. And it's a very sophisticated tracking system. It identifies when people from a company is starting to hit your website and what they're looking at. And it starts making decisions of what to serve them next via email or even a variable web page. And one inkling, if your company is, say, going after IBM, and all of a sudden you see 10 people from IBM IP addresses coming into your website, pay attention. There's people starting to vet you through. What do you start to do to reply to that or act upon that information? Intent is a big part of all this internet world, and especially search. What are you trying to do? What's the intent of the question? And I like the quote, you cannot get from the universe that which you will not ask for, as Adam and I were discussing earlier. It's like part of social media is getting the ask out there. It's not just being there. It's like, what's your message? What are you trying to get to from a goal perspective? Content that'll drive it. You've got those crazy numbers there in front of you. So what those represent, 1, 7, 30, 4, 2, 1. That's from a social media perspective. What do you do each day? What do you do each week? What's the plan for the week? What's your content going to be? The 30 is the month. You have your monthly plan. Then it goes into quarterly and twice a year. What are your major strategy revisits? And to the 1 year side, what's the overall goal? Because when you're into a social media plan, you've got a lot of content generally that you need to create, curate, and serve up. So the teams having plans as to what you're doing with them on an organized basis is critical, because you run out of content after a while. What are you going to be saying next week and the week after? The 7-20-10 rule is another interesting one. 70% of your content is low risk. It's like easy stuff. You're not going to freak somebody out over it. 20% you get a little more experimental, a little more risky. And it's about 10% where you try to push the envelope and see if you can get engagement with it. But that also, brings your risk level up higher. And then the 1-9-90, probably the first rule I remember hearing, it's like really just 1% of the people out there are call it the content creator side, and 9% are your editors, and the other 90% are, I call them the lurkers. They're just hanging out and watching. And even that I call it the 99-1 rule, and the 1 is like extremely optimistic. It's like less than 1% is doing it well. When you see a search result page with 10 results, and then you see that little number up there of how many possible results there were, it's needle in a haystack. It's tip of the iceberg. There's like very few that are actually at the top, doing it.
So there's only a few doing it well. Can you find that for me?
It could be having a good website, converting well, doing social media effectively. It's like for 80-20 rules, 80% of your profits, 20% of your clients. Online, I call it the 99-1. There's maybe 1% doing it effectively. And again, it might be getting conversions, a good web presence, good online. There's a lot of stuff that's just not well done out there. And especially from the money-making side, not a lot of people, in my estimation, are really doing a good job at effectively running a website, bringing social traffic into it, and then converting it to business. Few people really, I think, do that well. How many websites can you pull up? And it's a good, you look at a bounce rate on your website. That's become a critical factor from a Google perspective. If you're above 50%, you've got some issues, and Google's really paying more attention to that. So if people are getting to your page and it's not giving them what they're looking for, and we call it the 3-second rule, and I think it can work anywhere, either your web page, your Facebook page, whatever media property it is, if they're not getting what's going on within a few seconds, they're generally moving on and they're out of there. How do you engage them in a blink is really what it comes down to. And those last points are just the daily organic, and it almost works up from the bottom. Yeah, what do you got to say every day? What boosts your favorites? You got to work hard in Facebook to have a good content stream that's getting people's attention. But it's the social catalyst stuff that's back in the 10%. What's the stuff you're doing that's really pushing the envelope and trying to get higher levels of engagement? So low mo. I don't know how many people have heard the terminology so low mo. Anyone? That's the new term. It's social, local, and mobile. And they all combine and intersperse together. So the plan around this is you still need a solid home base. It might be your blog, it might be your website, but then it's all the properties you're connecting to it. I call the website your home. The social media is the vacation properties where you're entertaining, you're having fun, you're getting people engaged, all trying to drive them back to your home base. Your home base is usually doing your branding, it's doing your education, and hopefully you're converting them to a call, email, donation. Again, whatever that may be, it usually happens at the home base. It's rarer that you're getting sales out in Facebook versus getting them to your site. And especially as you go global, the thinking right now is you'll have multiple blogs in the specific country languages and connecting the appropriate properties around that. So again, you may now have multiple hub and spoke systems working in the different countries that you're working from. So your complexity really starts to go up. Connecting them all correctly is important too. All the cross-linking and what site you're linking to what site and where you're putting it. That's where the technical side comes in. Getting all that stuff right helps a lot because the search engines figure it out of where everything's connected and what's relevant to each other. And then you absolutely have to make the language and culture work with the devices and the channels, or you don't get anywhere. So there's really, I call it kind of the big five. It's a blogger website at your core: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google+, and LinkedIn. That's really where it's at for the most part, and those will take you globally easily. It's then identifying the local properties, and I'll show a couple as we get further in. But this device again, how many people are on a smartphone? It's about everybody. Penetration of these is going off the charts. We have a large fitness client, so very much B2C. Last year through the holiday times, we saw their mobile traffic spiking towards 50% of their overall traffic as people were getting more phones and tablets turned on. So again, if your world is not mobile friendly, you've definitely got some issues, especially website side. It's got to be something that's going to work across all devices. The big stat too, it had been about 50% of Facebook's traffic was mobile. It has spiked to 75%. That's amazing. Everybody's doing Facebook, and I'm doing it myself on the train. It's the one time to get a chance to do a quick scroll through Facebook and catch up. So the mobile has taken off. And like I said, I would argue all good social is bringing people back to your home base and trying to convert them there, opt them in, whatever it is that you may need to do. Here's another trend. SEO is social and social is SEO. The two things have really intertwined as far as I'm concerned. All the search engines are following social signals much, much closer to what you have going on in Facebook and Twitter is much more important. all the old stuff with SEO has, I would argue, gone away, all the spammier activities. Google has really shut that down. They just did what's called the Hummingbird update, biggest change they've made to their algorithm since Google started. And it's all working towards getting rid of the spammier stuff that's done, getting it back to, real people talking to real people, and, trying to have an authenticity factor versus a spammer factor. To your companies too, it's like then who's involved with what, whether you're divisional, the groups, the locals, it's a big juggling act. And then it's all balanced off against, what kind of resources and bandwidth you have. And this part too, this is kind of big, and I'm curious to see how many people have this thing. I've heard this so many times, people want to go to social, and then the first thing they're saying, well, we're not going on Facebook and we're not going to blog. And I'm like, okay, what do we do next? Blogging right now, especially in the US, is the #1 lead generation tactic that you can do. It covers a number of things. It gives you your pulpit, your property to speak from, but it also starts turning you up in search, rather effectively. But it's something that's a commitment, and rule of 2 comes in again. Can you sustain your blog over, multi-year? Yep.
You're referring to blogging as a #1 activity, or is it #1 revenue source?
I would say activity that generates leads. It was the top. I think LinkedIn was coming in second. So yeah, blogging is an important function. It drives traffic to your site and ultimately drives leads to your site. What your teams can handle is a big thing, especially for a corporate audience. I imagine it's not one person running it. Do you need to outsource to an agency, be it a PR agency or ad agency, or even, a specialist firm that takes care of all the different services that you need to have done on basically a 24/7 basis. Our teams run pretty much effectively almost 24/7, especially for monitoring Facebook. Someone's always on paying attention.
But the content, you can't outsource the content, can you?
Well, you do. We interact with a number of agencies on one of our clients. They'll hire agencies, big agencies, to cook up the crazy content stuff, and then we'll help manage the flow and the questions. And it is, you need content generation teams. It's, I call it the writer, the journalist part. That's a huge aspect to have, whether you're a small company or large. Who's able to write and create content. I like to call it even the power of the interview. For each of you, you're probably a encyclopedia of knowledge around your specialty, but 2 a.m. is not the time to write a blog post. So how do you get that out of you? That's where content generation teams come in. I love the idea of having clients interviewed once a week. Give me your top 3 things that's happening, and then you've got it out of your head and it's into someone's hands. You will vet it back. But it's one way to start creating content. On a bigger corporate scale, you're going to have an agency with a whole creative team thinking up whatever kooky stuff or good stuff that's going to engage your audience. So again, the big 5 is Facebook. They've really enhanced their global reach over the past year. Twitter, and generally Twitter, you're going to have individual Twitter accounts for each given culture or language. That Twitter multiplies easily and you can handle it. A lot of people don't think of YouTube as a social media platform, but it very much is, because it allows interaction and comments. And as you get engagement on your YouTube channel, that gets stronger. YouTube's also the second biggest search engine in the world. It's like I tell people, whenever you're looking to figure something out, go look on YouTube. You'll find a video on how to do just about anything. Some are better than others, but you will find something. Google Plus, do not overlook Google Plus. Google's huge. It's their play at social media, and I'd say Google Plus is more, the techie side, where Facebook is more the friends and family. But anything you're doing in Google Plus, it's like a direct pipeline into the heart or the index of Google.
I find Google Plus more international.
Is it more international?
I mean, I have a very big international following. On Google Plus, and I just don't have on Twitter. So UK, Google Plus I find, and I have people from India, from Asia, from all over the world on Google Plus that I'm not seeing on Facebook or others. Is that your experience?
I don't see a lot of people internationally for me on Google Plus, but it is very much an international platform. It's everywhere. That's one thing with Google. They span the globe. Facebook may be as much of it's not the right place for what you're doing and the conversation there, or as much of building into Facebook. If it's B2B, it's probably less likely Facebook. I think the techie side certainly is there in Google Plus, but there's more to it. Google Plus, I think, emerged from Google wanting to help control spam, the unknown person. So as you get your Gmail account and where you can capture your name as a Gmail, I would say do it so that you've got your name and someone else doesn't. And then you get your Google Plus page. Within that, there's your About page where you start to fill out your profile. Google about 2 years ago came up with a convention. It's called authorship markup. And that's like their spam control feature. I think of it as that way. And when you see authorship markup play out, whenever you do a search and you get a result and the picture comes up with the search result, that's Google having enough confidence that the post or content they're serving up answers the query, and then they're tying it to the person who has filled out their profiles correctly, and they've cross-connected themselves to all their properties and publications correctly, and it's called authorship markup. And there's a couple levels of it. You can run it in your blog as a corporation, and it's like rel equals name is the little piece of code, or rel equals publisher. When you use the rel equals publisher, you can attach the different voices in your company and have them associated with that blog. So for somebody that's in, the research business, or even, law firm is a good example. How do you have all your legal voices tied into your blog and showing up where appropriate? And that picture showing up with the search result tends to get more click-through. It's a higher trust factor. And so, again, it's their effort at trying to have real people doing real conversations versus some spammer on the other side of the globe, just making up drivel. The B2B side, LinkedIn, just to touch on. LinkedIn's really hot right now. They're trying to be the business content source. It's growing rapidly. It's global, and there are some competing properties. But I absolutely find on the B2B side, that's like it's a property to be reckoned with. And the ad side of LinkedIn is doing its job. We really like they have promoted updates now, and those promoted updates are able to be highly targeted and push messaging out into the target streams that you're going for. Each of these properties too, everyone thinks social media is free, and to some degree it is. It's, the cost is the time you put into it, but there's also the paid media side of it and how you interact with that. We do a lot of promoted Facebook stories. We promote and get likes. For some businesses, before they open, we'll have a Facebook page built out with fans so that when they open and go live, there's people there. It's like little stuff like that really makes a difference on, how quick you're ramping up. So it's very important around all the different properties. Where does this fit, and how do you add in the advertising side to all this social? And Google and Facebook haven't, I don't know if they've said it so clearly, but they want you to pay to play more. The free stuff is, evolving away. Everyone's trying to figure out how to monetize better. You're going to see Twitter with their paid ads coming up. With the IPO that just happened to Twitter, there's going to be much bigger business pressure on them to actually perform and show some ROI, and it's going to come from advertising first. Then, of course, again, there's regional and local channels in any given country. You've really got to go figure out which channel makes sense and then a strategy around it and support it effectively with the right words. And that's part of the geo-targeting comes into that. You can dial stuff in. Company pages in LinkedIn now can be targeted and geo-targeted, so you can serve up the correct info on a company page based on where the visitor's coming from. The micro comes along, and the mobile friendly. I've got a piece I'll show you. There's to mobile again, how many people are viewing your content through here. And there's a big, debate, should it be an app or should it be an HTML5 environment? I just saw a presentation, which you'll see part of it from Future M, which was the big Future of Marketing Week that MyTex sponsored in Boston, which is really becoming a big event in Boston. It's putting Boston on the marketing map. And the Google advertising VP was there. And again, that's their big thing. Is it scalable and able to span the globe? That's where the HTML5 may win out over the app world. So this piece here was a campaign that Burberry did with the help of Google. Now, it intertwined with social, but it also used HTML5 to make this possible. And it also pulled in kind of the emotional side, the heartstrings, which as you combine the whole campaign together, that's what's making it go. And then you've got social kind of residing in the background where people can connect to it. So here, take a look. So this was a technological feat that just occurred for everything that went into this. It made global reach. Go look it up. Send your significant other a kiss. The technology to understand that the kiss was hitting the screen was remarkable. And again, all driven by HTML5 and supporting technological properties. This is more of the future of getting messaging out and then especially integrating it into social. And it just did a good to the intertwining the emotional part of all this to really fuel it. Question?
So Burberry did the production of this video and then worked in partnership with Google to implement it for that.
Exactly. And Burberry was doing a repositioning here. From all their clothes side, they're trying to do a bit of a reposition. It's an old brand and it needed a refresh. So yeah, this was a pretty cool campaign. It got great global, recognition. So again, there's some really cool stuff that can be done, but that takes it away from being, real simple. And here's a brand, and especially connecting with Google in the right way. We find Google, we get good support from, but it's still more of a black box. You don't just have the phone number and call them up. Facebook's even worse. It's like getting help and support and, who's the Facebook guy you can call? You don't see him. It's like it's an interesting paradox of sorts, yet they want you to spend a fortune. And Google's got the ad teams in Cambridge, I know a lot of them. If you're Fidelity and you're spending crazy amounts of money, they'll have somebody helping you. But if you're more the mainstream, smaller SMB type business, you're reading the web page and figuring out how it works. So it makes some challenges. Now to all this, forget doing it if you don't get measurement and metrics driven behind it. The big three is traffic, leads, and sales. Are you getting traffic to your property? Does it convert to a lead? Does it convert to a sale? After that, there's a whole host of analytics that you can dig to, and from bounce rate and page views. I've got a buddy of mine. He was one of the pioneers on what was called deep dive analytics. You've probably heard big data. Well, big data flows into all this, but it's making sense of it. It's like you got a ton of data, but who can figure out what it means and then deliver it to the marketing side to make some kind of actionable plan around it. Years ago, I worked with IRI out of Chicago when they first were debuting the rewards cards. and amazing amounts of data. What really drove them was they needed analysts to take the data and make sense of it. As they figured that out, they could tell that it's Thursday afternoon and you're likely to go to CVS and buy a gallon of milk. And they would have that knowledge, then trying to figure out, okay, what's the marketing pathway that helps you do that and maybe buy one more thing. That's the big leap. So how many people see Google Analytics on a regular basis and then rip through the report and try to make sense of it from a next step? I know we send it to all our clients and then we're asking them, so did you read it? And usually is no. That's where you need some support factor that helps. There's a lot of hand-holding needed. On the social channel insights, I don't know if anyone's noticed, if you're running company pages, LinkedIn has just, past few months now, really amped up what insights and analytics they give you. Facebook, too, has taken it to a level higher. Twitter really doesn't give you anything, and they've got a lot of data. What I'm hearing is at some point, Twitter data is going to start to come out and be more either advertiser available or publicly available, so you can see what's going on in there. Two other pieces, too. This jumps around a little bit, but there's one tool that I generally like called Hootsuite. We use it at AMA. I use it in some of my other client situations. At my company, we run our own proprietary tool, but it's similar to Hootsuite. It does a lot of stuff in one place for controlling a whole bunch of social channels, letting you communicate easily. It goes well to your phone. And, there's a free version of it. It's somewhat limited, but it's good to play with. The pro version at $9.99 with 2 seats is a fabulous deal to just have that capability and learn it. If you're in a social media world, you're probably already running with something like that. But even for your personal, it's like being able to go in one place and manage it. I think one of the really cool things with Hootsuite is then as you connect it to analytics and start to merge the data, and you start to get a lot more out of it. How many people are on Clout? Just one? So Clout.com is like a service that kind of tells you how much clout you have from an online perspective. And what is your ability to be call it the market influencer, like I was saying before. So one cool thing with Hootsuite is you can start to identify who are the influencers, say, that are following you on Twitter. If you can speak to those influencers effectively and they're sharing it with their following of 100,000, that's going to go a lot further than just blasting out a tweet to the general audience. So it lets you start to identify who are the influencers and how do you start to leverage something. Even within Hootsuite, they have, I think it's $20-something a month, Hootsuite University. Great investment. It's like go through it. There's a series of videos that walks you through it exceptionally well. And then there's a whole host, there's too much information in there. But for as much as you can consume, it's a great place. It just brings you up, from green circle, blue square into black diamond. And before you know it, you're doing more expert stuff than you realize. And to around all this, it's sales funnels, goal funnels. What's the pathway to purchase? It's like everybody knows, if your client's doing this, are you doing that with them? And you know what questions they're going to ask. Are you able to answer the question proactively? So that's where like the social media listening comes in. First, you're hearing, what people care about, how they're talking about it when they have a problem. The Google Analytics part or higher level analytics starts making these goal funnels visible. And you really got to have somebody set them up. Any given page on your website, a landing page should be it's a goal page. Trying to get somebody to a page to do, I'll say, one thing. That's one of the big problems with home pages for a lot of people. You got 15 things going on in the home page. Somebody hits your home page. What do I do? Again, 3-second rule kicks in. Where am I? What can I do here? And the other part of that is, what can I do here is how do you solve their problem? What should I do next? Call, email, keep it simple. Some of the best websites will have just a very simple, right in the banner, or they'll have multiple banners, but they've all got, you identify what company, what it's about, you don't have to figure that out. What problem do they fix? And if they've done a good job with their personas, they're speaking to who you are, and then they're giving you one nice, easy pathway. Sometimes it's just make the click button this big and put a nice benefit on it so they know why they're clicking it versus join. You know, it's like little stuff like that, and then testing against it. Does a red button work better than a blue button? You know, if you've got the bandwidth to do it, test it. You might find one does work better. And then especially culturally, red might be a bad color in Japan. It might be a great color in Russia, or vice versa. It's like you got to find some of that stuff out. What works also culturally. And then, your pipeline metrics, your Salesforce side. So who is in your pipeline? Those are like the big three data sources that you're weighing against, and what's flowing through your system. So again, I'll say, if you don't have measurement and metrics tied into it, it's like you're blindfolded. So that's got to be part of the culture of the company, be data driven. That's what marketing is really becoming all about. And to some of the systems, this is a very much filtered list. There's hundreds, well, probably hundreds of systems out there. Couple that I like that I've played with a lot, and they're generally they work well. Sprout Social does some nice stuff, has a very good interface. On a personal level, I think again it's like $9 a month. Their enterprise version does not get too expensive. I think that goes into the $50 a month range. Hootsuite again has a free version, pro version. Their enterprise version then starts to get a little bit expensive. I think they're around $700 or $800 a month to run an enterprise version of Hootsuite. So again, you've got to have some wherewithal going to get it running and have the people that can support it. Wildfire is now owned by Google, and that was like a Facebook promotion app that just grew and grew and grew. And I did a project through Bentley University for the U.S. government, and it was very difficult getting through to the right government people to get the answers we were looking for. And the whole social media side was just like so difficult to deal with. But when we finally did get through to one of the key guys, they were running Wildfire for now their entire social media management system for, enterprise-wide government side. And that's a place where, again, to all the crazy website stuff on the healthcare side, it's like you can't have a failure on your technology. And with Google on Wildfire, that would be one of the more solid platforms. Another one I liked was Monitor, and that was like a Twitter feed reader. So you could just go to monitor.com, throw in a keyword, and just start looking at multiple streams of tweets and Facebook comments. It's like a great, quick, instant way to get some idea of what's going on. Well, Twitter just changed their API, and Monitor doesn't work anymore. So that's another thing of, what do you own, what don't you own, what are you relying on to all of a sudden have it go away? That's definitely a reality. TweetDeck, Twitter just bought them. Again, it's kind of like a Hootsuite and a Monitor. TweetDeck is really good because it gives you almost instantaneous info. Hootsuite's got a delay to it. So, for instance, the example would be if you're at a trade show and you're following people's tweets around your company, TweetDeck works better because you're going to get your info quickly. There won't be a lag to it. And sometimes those cases, it's like he who responds first, gets the best result. Hyper alerts, fairly new. That tracks Facebook mentions. So it's something, again, you go to the site, set it up, and you can start to track, what people are saying on Facebook. How many people have Google Alerts running? It's pretty good. It's like, it's free, it's simple. It can overwhelm you if you're not careful. And I would say to anybody in the room, go to Google Alerts, just Google it, and put in your name, put in your company name. And again, don't do too many, because all of a sudden you might find you get a flood of results back. And you may have to modify your search. If you do just a broad search with no quotes, you may get way too much info. Where you apply quotation marks or exact match, you put brackets on, will really control what shows up. But it's a very effective tool. If somebody's talking about you, better you know about it than your client calling you and saying, hey, did you see? It gives you one leg up, and again, it's a pretty effective system. There's deeper listening, but that's like the first pass. That Google Alerts would be my green circle listening tool that gives you an effective tracking, and you can even track all messaging or image-wise, media, web, all the different categories within Google. Taking social media a level deeper, there's, again, a good number of systems. A notable one is Crimson Hexagon. They're starting to measure things like sentiment. And we do that at our company. Our people, when we monitor Facebook, we're looking at, we just measure it with humans and on a thumbs up, neutral, or down level. And what we're working towards predicting is, an ROI outcome. And some of it's obvious. If everyone's giving you this, ROI, I wouldn't expect it to go up. If you're getting a lot of this, it's going in the right direction. So Crimson Hexagon, again, a more sophisticated system, fairly expensive. Radian 6 does a similar thing. Salesforce bought Radian 6 a while back. I'm kind of weird, and I don't know, there's some aspect of it, them bonding together with Salesforce throws me off a little bit. But again, a very high-end, listening tool that, again, you're trying to get marketing insights from. And the last one I mentioned is Visible Technologies. There was a company called Symphony that Kantar Media owned. A couple of years ago, I did a project with them. And that was one of my first really enterprise-wide deep dives into media monitoring. And that's a step up. You've got social media monitoring, but then you've got media monitoring. And that starts to bring in radio, TV, newspaper. And it's amazing what they're able to just get their arms around. But again, there's just massive amounts of data. So they were heavily driven by analysts that could then look at the data and help translate it over to, management to make some, intelligent decisions around what's going on with it and how do we take an actionable, strategy or tact with what we're learning. So kind of just a quick cross-section. Any of those, take a peek at them where you can. And that's the other big thing. When do you do it? Midnight or 2 a.m. or middle of the workday. But again, it's kind of good info as you start to see it, particularly if it pertains directly to your job. So Coca-Cola, they are, I would argue, one of the social media leaders out there for what they do and just on a global basis. In fact, I think one slide's out of order here. Let me just check. Let me start here. April, again, I'm on the board of AMA and to the Grand Gathering Leadership Summit out in Chicago. I met Rebecca Messina. She was on a panel, and she was amazing. She is one of the CMOs of Coca-Cola. She was just back from, I believe it was Turkey, and probably the most compelling message that she spoke to. Here's Coca-Cola, global brand, they're everywhere, but they couldn't emphasize more. All their marketing boils down to local. Everything's local, and it emanates out from each bottling plant. It really boils down to that. So that kind of really struck me as, a key thought. You wouldn't think of Coca-Cola as a local company so much, but that's how they think of themselves, and that's their hope is to their audiences on a local basis, to think of as local. These few links here will all take you to some good blogs just from a quick view of kind of seeing what they do. Let me pull you back here because I was impressed with this. And again, it was a commercial done interwoven with social, and it brought into play an important global relationship, in this case between India and Pakistan. 2.3 million video views is a lot of video views. It's like if you're trying to put up a commercial and get 2 million people to see it. Significant likes, although not that many, but if you see the comments that are associated with it, they were getting great engagement too. People actually stepping up, being that 9% instead of the 90 to actually go say something and do something. So here was this program.
The relationship between India and Pakistan is one that has seen a lot of lows.
It's stressful, it's tense. It seems it's not improving and it's getting worse.
It's only been 60 years that we have been apart. Before that, we were living harmoniously together.
I think all the strife would go away if you took away the Baghdad in the middle of the two countries.
It saddens me that we have this neighbor that we can't even go visit.
They have this perception which they've ingrained in their head that that's the bad guy. But when they actually meet them, they realize, what, he's like me.
Mainly because there's no communication. They're near us, but we have no access to them. And it's sad. Because together, I think we would do wonders.
ideas, thoughts, gestures, and take away that communication gap that exists.
If I have any opportunity to go to India, I'll surely go there. The whole idea of actually touching hands, it's like communicating with each other without words, and that action speaks louder than anything else.
This is what we're supposed to do, right? We are going to take minor steps so that we are going to solve bigger issues.
It is more about, how similar we are as opposed to how different we are.
Togetherness, humanity, this is what we want. More and more exchange.
So I saw this campaign at Future M. Actually, the keynote, Jim Sparrows, who's the Chief Creative Officer of Fidelity, spoke to this. And so this does a bunch of things. It's the emotional side and what they've tied together from an advertising standpoint, and then to a piece of technology that allowed this to occur. And then obviously they came in and filmed it, and it became, a bit of a YouTube sensation, and then all tied in through social. Coca-Cola does some amazing stuff globally. There was another campaign I saw that I was like so tempted to show in Australia, where they came up with a process that would spit out a Coke can with your name on it. And they drove it through social media, and they had a special machine that you could go find your name or put your name in, and you would get your name out on a Coke can. And then they supported it with all types of media and social. Really cool program. So Coke has been just one of those notable leaders globally, and then intertwining it to social. Again, social is just a tool in all this. All the other stuff still works, but social is one of those tools that unite it. This one here too, from Dove, was then repeated in other countries, particularly China.
San Jose Police Department from 1995 to 2011.
I showed up to a place I'd never been, and there was a guy with a drafting board.
We couldn't see them, they couldn't see us.
Tell me about your hair.
I didn't know what he was doing, but then I could tell after several questions that he was drawing me.
Tell me about your chin.
It kind of protrudes a little bit, especially when I smile.
Your jaw.
My mom told me I had a big jaw.
What would be your most prominent feature?
Kind of have a fat, rounder face.
The older I've gotten, the more freckles I've gotten.
I would say I have a pretty big forehead.
Once I get a sketch, I say thank you very much, and then they leave. I don't see them.
All I had been told before the sketch was to get friendly with this other woman, Chloe.
Today I'm going to ask you some questions about a person you met earlier, and I'm going to ask you some general questions about their face.
She was thin, so you could see her cheekbones. And her chin, it was a nice, thin chin.
She had nice eyes. They lit up when she spoke.
Cute nose.
She had blue eyes, very nice blue eyes.
So here we are. This is the sketch that you helped me create, and that's a sketch that somebody described of you.
So yeah, that's...
She looks closed off and fatter. Sadder, too. The second one looks more open, friendly, and happy.
I should be more grateful of my natural beauty. It impacts the choices and the friends that we make, the jobs we apply for, how we treat our children. It impacts everything. Couldn't be more critical to your happiness.
Do you think you're more beautiful than you say?
Yeah. Yeah.
We spend a lot of time as women analyzing and trying to fix the things that aren't quite right. And we should spend more time appreciating the things that we do like.
So again, great filmmaking in a sense, quite a commercial. And now it's a campaign that is starting to deploy globally. The link to the Chinese campaign is below it, and it brings you to just an interesting place and then all intertwined with social media to support it. And again, into this piece, I have an employee that works for me, Jing Jiang. She's my pay-per-click rock star. We just did an H-1B visa and kept her. And so she gave right here is a live first-hand account of Chinese social media. And it's a perspective I could never share as effectively as Jing into what the channels are. So I'll leave it to wherever you can get to click through. And again, the Dove is linked through that. It's going to give you a good perspective of, to how the Chinese are looking at it and what they're doing there. Another campaign that was quite notable is with Dell and what they did. Again, trying to get into the Chinese market. Dell's been very effective, especially on Twitter. So how do we make this leap to the Chinese market? They had a specific audience that they were going after and, certain goals, but the Chinese aren't embracing Twitter at all. It's not as set up well for them. So what they did was they went to China's version of Twitter, Sina, and used that platform. And the specific things that worked were the local teams that ran it so that you had the actual people, making relevancy and proper connections to it. So the results, within 6 months, Dell picked up 20,000 followers, pretty highly targeted. They became the third most followed brand on Sina. It gave them feedback, massive feedback, and it became a listening channel again. So that was some of the benefits that were coming out of it. And that's just a quick picture of the Sina platform. That was, again, one of the more effective uses of then a global, taking social media done here and the best practices and then trying to adapt it to another country. This is a little piece on some of the stuff we do for Planet Fitness. A combined approach is what we pulled together. We're using Facebook, YouTube. We go heavily into Google, retargeting ads. Promoted video is huge, and we especially take it to the local level. One of the biggest changes we made with them was taking it from one big Facebook page to 700 Facebook pages, all driven by the local gym. All of a sudden, all the bad people started going away because it was tougher to go swear in front of people that, were in your gym. They had the lunk problem. They had that, I pick things up, put things down. They have an ongoing battle with the lunks who are just want to attack. They call them the trolls online. There's always somebody, especially with anonymity, who's like, they'll say anything. Back to Google, putting real people behind it. Are you as likely to have a tirade if they know exactly who you are versus if you're anonymous? It does make a big difference. And just across the board, by applying all these different strategies and carefully controlled and monitored, we found just this past October over the prior October, online joins are up 92%. And so for them, that's a big victory. We think there's even more attribution to that, and we're trying to prove this model out further. But it's an interesting connection as you take all the social and local and mobile, tie it together. And it's not any one thing, it's a combination of strategies and channels that brings it together. So wrapping up, mobile is changing everything. You need to figure out ways to embrace it if you haven't. From your website on out is key. Social customer care is another growing area of people expecting good service through Facebook. 2 years ago, I was at Future M, and we were in a session, and it came up about JetBlue and Twitter. So there's about 400 people in this big audience, and people are starting to tweet it. Within 7 minutes, JetBlue was coming back and saying, hello, Boston, Future M, and all that. They pay attention. I've heard anecdotal stories of people tweeting in line at a JetBlue line that the line's too long, and magically somebody comes out and helps. They're paying attention online. It's stuff like that that's really starting to revolutionize. You want instant gratification if you can get it. How do you get instant response and someone's paying attention to you? Social media enables a lot of that. As I mentioned, Hummingbird with Google. Again, it's changed all of what search is about. And I think search and social and all that, it's all rolling up together. Another cool thing, Google Now. How many people use Google Now? Anyone? Off of your, certainly on an Android, off of your main screen, you've got a Google search bar with a microphone. That's Google now. That's Google trying to be like Siri was, but with a lot more horsepower behind it. Google is trying to be your personal assistant, like Star Trek days, I don't know how many people have the Star Trek background, but it was like, computer, I need this. That's where Google's trying to take it to, where they become your one source for everything. And that's what drives me back to Google Plus and being everything in Google. Google dominates the marketplace by a long margin over Bing and Yahoo and whatever other search engines are there. So they are the dominant player. We don't invest any money in any other ad platforms till Google funds have been exhausted, and we don't think we'll get any more ROI out of them. They still very much rule it. And then universal analytics is something that's growing as well, and it's just getting closer tied into your analytics, so you're understanding where attribution comes from. What series of ads and recommendations bring you through your path to some sort of buy? And that's kind of what the ZMOT talks to. It gets you to that concept. And the other part is gamification. Humans respond to game-type activities. So where you can figure out some sort of gaming mode into your campaign and test it, it generally yields results. People like to play the game. And you'll find a good list of a lot of what we talked about for link places to go explore more. And I should take us back. Follow me on Twitter, link in with me, or Google+. Be good to make the relationship. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lou. A little token of appreciation. Thank you for your time and the information. Couple of other things. Thank you, Michael Glantz, here, our member and also partner of Folio Howag, for hosting us. Thank you again. And for our members, our next meeting is the end of year social. So there was not going to be a business topic. It's just going to be drinks or whatever. And we could have it end of year or probably beginning of January. And this time we're going to do it in association with, where is he? There he is. Jay's networking group, which is the marketing, right? The Meng group, for some of you who know. So it's going to be two groups getting together, and it'll be good networking. So look out for an email going out soon. So that wraps up the session. Thank you again, Lou, for the time. Please feel free to grab a bite to eat and network, and until Michael kicks us out. Thank you.